welcome to another video. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for all of the love that I got on last week's video. Everyone was so supportive and it really made me feel so much better about the whole thing. It really gave me the confidence to keep going, and I'm just so glad that everybody seemed to enjoy the video that I put out. For this week's video, I had a few ideas in mind, and I thought the best way to decide what to do was to put some stories on my Instagram and ask people what they would like to see next. The most popular choice was for a video all about planning a wedding through a pandemic and about postponing our wedding and everything that goes along with that. I know that's something that'll be on a lot of people's minds at the minute, and it's understandable that that will be the thing people would most want to see from me. Obviously we have a lot of experience with postponing a wedding now. We've had to postpone ours 3 times. We've had 4 different wedding dates. So I guess I might have a little bit of information that could be helpful for some people, or some advice, or even just for people to see that they're not the only person feeling the way they are or thinking the things that they're thinking. I guess the best place to start will be at the beginning. So we were due to get married in May of last year, 2020. Obviously coronavirus hit, and in March we went into lockdown. Just before lockdown started, we'd already made the decision to postpone our wedding, and we postponed it to August 21st, 2020. The main thing I would say about that is you need to prioritise your suppliers. So when you need to change your date, you're going to have to be aware that you might not be able to get all of your suppliers for the same date. Unfortunately, that's just something that you have to deal with when something like this is happening. People get booked up, people don't have that date available, and you've just got to work with what you can. So make a list of every supplier that you've got booked and decide which ones are the most important to you that you wouldn't want to lose, and contact those first. So for us, obviously that was our 2 venues, our church and our reception venue, which is Broughton Crags. So we contacted those 2 places, and luckily they were both available on the same date in August, and we booked for the 21st. We picked that date because we still wanted it to be a summer wedding, but we thought August would be far enough away that coronavirus would no longer be a thing. Obviously it was. But once you've got those main ones booked that you definitely don't want to lose, then you can start to work your way through your list of your other suppliers, trying to get them booked for that date. If not, then obviously you're going to have to start looking for other alternatives. We were really lucky in that all of our suppliers have been so supportive, and they were all available on every date that we've needed to book, with the exception of one supplier, which I'll get to later. Like I say, everyone has been so supportive. We haven't had to pay any amendment fees or anything like that. We haven't had any issues with anybody. I know there's some brides that have had real problems with suppliers asking for a lot more money, or wanting to charge them a fee for moving, or just not being very helpful in general. I know this is hard for businesses, it's hard for everybody, but everyone needs to support each other. People like me and other brides and grooms out there, we aren't choosing to move our dates, we aren't choosing to do this, we're not trying to cause hassle for any businesses. So for businesses to take it out on the customers, I just think it's a really awful thing to do. We obviously understand that by moving our wedding to 2022, there is going to be an increase in some prices, but that's just something we have to deal with. But to try and charge extortionate amounts more for moves that were being done to dates in the same year, I just think isn't very fair on the brides and grooms that are doing it. So once you've got all of your suppliers sorted out, even if you've had to book different suppliers, the next thing obviously is to let all your guests know. Now this for me was probably one of the hardest bits the first time around, because you were filled with all these questions of, will people understand? Will people still be able to come to our new date? I'm going to have to change all my seating plan, because obviously we already had all of that done because it was so close to our wedding. We were really fortunate in that everyone has been really great every time we've had to move a date. All of our friends and family have been so supportive, so sympathetic, and it really made the whole experience a lot easier. There's something I would say to people out there, if you're watching this and you're not a bride and groom that are planning, if you're a guest at a wedding that's going on during all of this, just try and be as supportive as you can to the couple. There is nothing worse at the minute than having to go through all of this changing and rearranging, and to have the support of your friends and family really does mean a lot. So then of course it got to the end of May, and coronavirus was obviously still going to be a thing in August. We knew we weren't going to get the wedding that we wanted to have, so we made the decision to postpone again. From August we then moved it to April 2021, so we had to go through all of the changing again, suppliers, letting guests know, changing dates on everything, which luckily I hadn't already changed from the first time around. And again, everyone was really supportive, everyone was really sympathetic. And to be honest, the second time around was a little bit easier than the first because we already knew what we were doing and we already understood what process worked best, what was easiest, what things needed done, what were our priorities. But then it got to September, and as I said in my last video, that's when Boris made his announcement of tighter restrictions and that they could be in place for up to 6 months. Now that took it up to just before our wedding date in April of this year, and for me, I just couldn't handle any more of it. It was just dragging me down, it was ruining the whole wedding planning process for me. And I know the main thing is that you're getting married, but I also wanted to be able to enjoy the build-up. I wanted us to be able to have the wedding that we really wanted, and at the time, it didn't look like there was any way that that was going to happen for this April. So we made the decision again to postpone, and we've now moved it to May of 2022. While that was a really hard decision, and I know there's probably some brides and grooms out there now that are in the position where they're having to think about what to do, it was hard, but I felt so much better after we did it. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I could enjoy the wedding planning process again and start to get excited for it. May 2022 felt far enough away that it didn't feel like there was any pressure or any worrying. All we'd been doing was thinking, will the wedding get to go ahead? Will we have to deal with any restrictions? What will our day be like? It was just so much worry and so much stress, and to have it moved that far away just took all of that away, and it was like we were starting afresh. We could just enjoy the planning and just be excited at the idea of our wedding again. As I said previously, we did have one supplier that unfortunately wasn't able to move to our new dates, and while that was disappointing, it did mean it gave us a chance to look at our options more and even change our mind slightly about what we were wanting. So I'm not going to say which supplier it was, but what I would say if you find yourself in that situation is to look around at all the options you have available, make a list of them, make a list of sort of what you like about them, what you're unsure about, discuss it between the two of you, get in contact with all of your options, ask for quotes, ask for information, just get all of the information that you need in one place, and then you can make an informed decision about who to go with. Because you obviously booked your original vendor for a reason. There was something you liked about that person, and now obviously you can't have them. So while this might in a way be like your second option, it could end up being a better option than what you started with, because you might find people that you didn't know existed first time around, and you can really turn a negative situation into a positive situation, which is what we've done this time. Something else that I would recommend to any brides and grooms out there that are watching this and aren't following me on my Instagram is to set up an Instagram account of your own, or a blog or something like that. The wedding Instagram community is honestly one of the best support networks that you could find. Everyone builds each other up, everyone shares ideas, everyone's so supportive of each other, everyone gives advice, everyone's messaging each other, commenting, just keeping each other really positive, but also supporting each other when things are getting a bit crap. And I would definitely recommend it because it's one of the things that has really got me through the whole thing. I think if I hadn't set up my wedding Instagram, it would have dragged me down a lot more than it did, because I just wouldn't have had that outlet. I wouldn't have had that place to go where I could vent my frustrations and talk about all things wedding. Because obviously in the greater world, there is bigger things going on. I know there's people dying, there's people really ill, there's people losing jobs and businesses, but that doesn't make your worries about your wedding any less valid. And to have that place you can go to talk about that and not feel like you're just whinging to your friends and family really does help, because everyone's in the same position as you and everyone understands. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you haven't done it already. Something I have learned off the wedding Instagram community is to try and make the best out of a crap situation. Obviously, planning through a pandemic isn't the best position to be in. You can't really go to any wedding fairs if that's the sort of thing that you were wanting to do. It's not as easy to view venues, you can't meet with suppliers, especially when you're in lockdown, you definitely can't. People don't have as much free time if you were able to meet with them. You have to do meetings over Zoom, you've got to do everything over email. It's not easy. So you really need to find things that you can focus on that are going to make the process good again in some way. And if you've had to postpone your wedding, look for things that are going to make your new wedding day even better than your old one would have been. So for example, I've changed a couple of ideas that I had in mind for our wedding, and I've come up with a lot of new ideas of things that I want to add, and these are things that we wouldn't have had on our original day. So now it's like it gives us that thought of, oh well, if we'd have already got married, we wouldn't have had this at our wedding, or we wouldn't have had this. And it gives you something else to look forward to and something else to be excited about, to make it seem like more of a positive experience than a negative one. I've done a lot of DIY for our wedding. I've made all the stationery, all of the signage, all of the favours. I've done all that myself. So I've come up with a few new little DIY things that I can do that not only are going to help me pass the extra time that we've now got to the wedding, but are also giving me something else to be excited about, and they're things that I think everyone at the wedding will get to enjoy. Speaking of having to do everything via email, that is actually one positive that I would say about not being able to meet with as many people face to face. A lot of people seem to think that the easiest way to do things and arrange things is via phone. And while that's maybe true in the sense that you ring someone, you talk it through and it's all done in one go, it also means that you've got no proof of anything. So for example, if you ring a supplier to ask for a quote, you agree on the quote and you make your booking over the phone, you've then got no proof if they come back to you and say, no, we agreed on this price and it's much higher than the one you agreed. Not that that's happened to us, but just as an example. Whereas I prefer to do everything via email, Facebook Messenger, text message, anything that means I've got everything we've agreed on there in black and white in front of me, so that if anything ever gets disputed or anything ever isn't as we wanted it to be, we've got the proof of what we agreed on with that particular supplier. So all of my contact, for the most part, has been done through email and through Facebook Messenger, because I just feel like that gives me that extra backup, that if I ever need to double check any details or make sure that we're on the same page with anything, I can go back through the emails or through the messages and say, look, this is what we agreed on this date. I can resend you a screenshot of the message, or I can resend you the email if you would like to see. And that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give. I used to think that the phone was the best way to do things, because you would ring someone and get it done there and then, rather than having to sit and wait for a reply. But at least this way you've got it all in black and white and you've got that backup just in case you need it. Luckily we haven't needed it for anything, but at least I know I've got it there and it gives you that peace of mind. Something else I would say, and this is to all the friends and family out there of people who are getting married, there is some things that you just really shouldn't say in situations like this. You won't understand how it feels to have people say to you constantly, oh, fingers crossed for your date, or oh, but what if this can't happen, or are you actually still going to get married if you can't do this? You've already got all those questions going round in your head anyway. You don't need other people asking you them, and believe me, you get asked them constantly. And while I'm sure people are just curious, or they just want to show support or show that they're interested in some way, when you're thinking those things yourself 24/7, you don't want other people firing them at you, because when it's in your own head, it's in your head. It doesn't feel like a reality. But as soon as other people in the world start asking you the same worries that you've got, it makes it hit home and it makes it feel even worse. So all I would say, if any of your friends and family are getting married, just be supportive, ask if there's anything you can do. Just let them know that you're thinking of them, let them know that you know how crap it must be, but don't fire them with 50 questions about, well, what are you going to do for this and what are you going to do if this? Just be there and support them, and let them know that if they do want to vent to you, or they do want to ask you anything or ask you advice, that you are there to listen to them, because that'll probably be one of the best things that you can do for them. Something else I will mention on the topic of friends and family is to try not to get too bogged down in other people's opinions. So it's really easy to take too much on of what other people are thinking. So when you've got everybody talking obviously about the virus and everyone talking about lockdown and restrictions and things like that, you feel like you're being bombarded with all of this information, and people saying, oh well, I think you should move it to there, no, I think you should wait it out, I think you should do this, I think you should move this. And while you do appreciate people giving you their thoughts, you can get so tied down in what everyone else is telling you, it's hard to think about what you want to do. So while it is important to listen to what other people are saying, because they might have very valid opinions and things that could really help you, at the end of the day you just need to block that out, discuss it between you and your partner, and do what you think's best for you. For example, I'm sure a lot of people thought that we were acting too soon when in September we moved from April of this year to May of next year, and that could have very well been the case. It could get to April of this year and we maybe could have had a brilliant wedding day, but at the time it felt like the best thing for us to do to move it to next year. So we did that and we're happy with that decision. We're still happy with that decision. Even if it turns out that we could have got married in April, I'm still happy we made the decision when we did, because it took away all the stress, it took away all the worry. And the last few months I've been able to enjoy the wedding planning process rather than being stressed out and wondering and worrying all the time like I was. At the end of the day, it's your wedding. You think about what's best for you, what's the best decision that you can make to keep you happy. We all know perfectly well, in the situation as it is at the minute, how important it is to keep yourself in a good mental state. And if you're constantly bogged down by wondering and questions and not being sure, maybe the best thing is to move it. Maybe the best thing for you is to keep being positive and wait it out a little bit longer, but you've just got to do whatever is best for you. It's like I said in my last video about when it gets to the date that would have been your wedding day if you've postponed. Everyone deals with it differently. For example, some people I was reading about had parties as much as they could do in lockdown, where their family and their friends at different times of the day drove past their house and give them a wave and were playing music from the car, and they were having a chat through the window, and they had drinks and they had nibbles and they made sort of a party out of it. Some people just did something special, them and their partner. They went for a day out somewhere if they could with the restrictions, or they organised a lovely day at home, whereas I just wanted to ignore it. We did get some nice flowers and chocolates and things like that off some friends and family, but on the whole I just wanted to pretend that it wasn't happening. I just wanted to act as if it was any other day. I wanted to try and forget that we would have been getting married that day. And while it didn't necessarily work, I did spend most of the day thinking, oh, by this time we would have just come out of church, or we'd be having our first dance now, they'd have been doing the speeches now. I did really try just to pretend like it wasn't happening, because it was the only way I could think of to deal with it. I think if I'd have actually acknowledged the day and tried to make something of it, I would have just ended up absolutely miserable, because it was just too much for me. This was at a point where until a few weeks earlier, I thought everything was fine. I thought our wedding was going ahead without any interruptions, any problems. I was so organised, I had everything planned perfectly, which I'm sure anyone who knows me can understand that that would be the case. But I just couldn't see anything that could go wrong. So when the worst thing that could go wrong did, I just didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to ignore it, and that was the best way I could think of to get through it. And I did. Yeah, looking back now, I sort of wish we'd maybe done something special to mark the day in some way, because in a 10 years time, 5 years time, I maybe will want to look back and see that we did something to commemorate that day. But at the same time, that's not our wedding day anymore. The 7th of May 2022 is now our wedding day, and that's the day that we're always going to celebrate, that's the day we're always going to remember. So in this whole situation, with every decision, every question, every choice, you've just got to do what's best for you and your partner. Take on board other people's advice, listen to what people have got to say, but at the end of the day, you can't please everybody else. You've just got to do what you want to do. I hope that the things I've talked about in this video have helped some people in some way. I hope if you're planning a wedding at the minute, you've managed to get something out of this video, and if you're not planning but you know someone who is, I hope it's give you a little bit of an insight into how they might be feeling, what they might be going through right now, and maybe encourage you to support them in some way, or to let them know that you're there if they need you. If anyone would like me to go into any more detail of anything that I've talked about in today's video, then just let me know in the comments or send me a message on Instagram and I'll see what I can do with a video for that. If not, I will be back in a couple of weeks' time with another video. I'll be going to my stories again to see what people would like to hear from me. Thank you again so much for all your support, and I really hope you like this video as much as people seem to like the last one. Thanks.